He wasn't the strongest of Earth's representatives, nor the most brilliant linguist or diplomat. He was, however, adaptable, a trait Earth's young delegation valued highly when navigating the galaxy's melting pot of cultures, and adaptability was exactly what brought him to the promenade of Elysium Gate that fateful day. The station stretched 4 kilometers, a glittering labyrinth of glass corridors and alien architecture. It was a place where species older than Earth's recorded history bartered over trade routes and political alliances. For Eli, it was equal parts overwhelming and fascinating. Every corner seemed alive with color and motion, towering reptilian merchants haggling over mineral rights, feathery diplomats fluttering greetings in clouds of scented pollen, and tiny, insectoid couriers zipping between crowds with data packets strapped to their thoraxes. Humans were still newcomers here. A curiosity at best, a potential rival at worst. Eli had grown used to the double takes, the curious stares, the quiet murmurs of Deathworld or whispered when he passed, or the term with a shrug. If humanity's stubborn survival earned them suspicion, so be it. It was then that he heard it low, resonant, and unlike any sound he had encountered so far, a voice that rolled like velvet, thrumming with a musical quality that made the translator implant in his skull hesitate before attempting conversion. Human, it purred. The word drawn out as if savored. Eli turned. She stood a few paces away, tall and poised, framed by the shifting neon signs of the promenade. Her features were unmistakably alien amber eyes that glowed faintly, sharp but graceful cheekbones, and ears that twitched with feline precision. Her hair shimmered silver, cascading in a way that seemed to defy the station's artificial gravity. Everything about her carried an air of practiced elegance, as if each movement were choreographed to captivate. Eli recognized her species instantly. Vayari. They were one of the more enigmatic members of the Galactic Compact, known for their musical language and disdain for directness. Words to them were not tools but weapons, cloaked, sharpened, and used with intent. To converse with the Vayari was to engage in a duel of implication, where the unsaid often mattered more than what was spoken, and now one of them was addressing him directly. "I need help," she continued, her tone dipping into a sound halfway between a purr and a hum. Eli hesitated. This could be anything: a test, a trap, or genuine need. But curiosity got the better of him. "What's wrong?" Her lips curved upward, revealing just enough of a smile to seem both genuine and mischievous. She leaned slightly closer, her amber eyes locking on his. Then, with deliberate softness, she purred a single word or sound. "Really? A grrr?" Eli blinked. What now?" The alien girl's tail flicked behind her. He hadn't even noticed she had one until now. She repeated the sound, slower this time, as if savoring it. "A grrr," she said again, this time curling her lips into something dangerously close to a smirk. Eli felt his translator implant buzz faintly, struggling to render meaning. The result projected on the edge of his vision, untranslatable sound that was rare, almost unheard of. The implant's database spanned thousands of dialects, yet it had failed. Was she toying with him? Probably. He rubbed the back of his neck. Awkwardly, "Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I have no idea what you just said." Her ears twitched and her eyes glittered with something between amusement and challenge. The purr that followed vibrated through the air, making nearby merchants glanced their way before shaking their heads. Apparently, whatever game she was playing was not unfamiliar among her people. But Eli was completely utterly lost. He opened his mouth to press further, but she merely gave a slight bow, graceful, teasing, and slipped back into the promenades. Flow of alien bodies, her silver hair vanishing into the crowd like starlight swallowed by night. Eli stood there for a long moment, frowning. He'd faced alien generals, bureaucrats, and politicians before, but never had a single sound unsettled him so much. "A grrr," he muttered under his breath, testing the word. It sounded ridiculous when he tried it, clumsy in his human throat. Whatever. It meant she clearly wasn't going to hand him the answer. And for reasons he couldn't explain, that fact bothered him more than it should have. Over the next few days, it seemed she was everywhere. On the promenade, near the arboretum, even once at the edge of the council hall's observation deck. Eli could never quite tell if it was coincidence or design, but he was leaning heavily toward the latter. Each time she crossed his path, she would catch his gaze. Let that sly smile curl her lips, and purr the same maddening phrase, a grrr. And every time, Eli blinked like a fool. His translator, implant normally flawless, remained stubbornly useless. The device was a marvel of compact engineering, its linguistic matrix constantly updated with the newest diplomatic corpora. Even the insectoid chitter of the Izurk, or the ultrasonic whistles of the Shur, were translated without difficulty. Yet somehow, 3 tiny syllables from one Vyari girl had left it broken. The display would flicker every time, projecting in cold, clinical text, untranslatable sound. The first time it happened, Eli had laughed it off. By the 4th encounter, he was growling under his breath in frustration. He tried research. He spent an evening combing through the galactic archives for anything on Vyari idioms. What he found only deepened the mystery. Scholars noted their speech was layered with purring expressions of intent, where the tone and rhythm carried more meaning than the words themselves. One report even mentioned that direct translations were often meaningless, even dangerous, when stripped of vocal nuance. Dangerous. That word lingered in his mind. By the second evening he had started asking around. Colleagues in the Earth delegation shrugged helplessly. Never heard of it, said one, a tired cultural attach who dealt with the Vyari only in passing. Even the station's polyglot scholars gave him little more than cryptic smiles. Finally, desperate for clarity, Eli sought out a Vyari diplomat. The elder male had fur as dark as space dust and eyes that glittered with age. Eli posed his question carefully, trying not to sound as foolish as he felt. The diplomat listened with interest, then gave a chuckling purr. If she calls you this, then she has chosen you. Do not ask me why. You'll learn when she wishes you to. Eli had walked away more confused than ever. The worst part was the way the girl he still didn't know her name seemed to enjoy his confusion. She wasn't cruel exactly, but she watched him with the air of a predator testing prey, waiting to see if it would bolt or stand its ground. And every time he tried to confront her about it, she would only purr the phrase again. Softer, richer, like a secret whispered in a dream. One evening, his frustration finally boiled over. He found her in the arboretum, where bioluminescent plants glowed in shades of blue and green, casting the air in soft alien light. She was sitting on the edge of a curved stone bench, tail curled lazily around her legs. All right, Eli said, striding toward her. I've had enough. What is this GRRR nonsense you keep throwing at me? Her ears twitched at the sound of his voice. Slowly, she looked up at him, eyes gleaming like molten amber. Instead of answering, she tilted her head, studying him as if weighing his patience. You still do not know? She purred at last, the sound rolling through the air like silk. No, Eli snapped, though the heat in his voice was more from embarrassment than anger. I've tried everything. Research, translators, even your own people won't tell me. It's driving me insane. What does it mean? Her lips curled into that same mischievous smile he was starting to recognize. She leaned forward just enough that the glow of the plants lit her face in strange, otherworldly hues. Not what, she whispered, her voice dropping into a register so soft his implant barely picked it up. Ooh. Eli froze, the words sinking. In like a stone in deep water, her tail flicked once, deliberate, before she stood, brushing past him with a whisper of silken fabric. For a heartbeat, her shoulder brushed his arm, and he caught the faintest scent of something wild, electric. When she was gone, swallowed by the shadows of the arboretum, Eli stood rooted to the spot. Not what he repeated to himself. Who? Implications struck him harder than any insult could have. She wasn't naming a thing. She was naming him. For the first time since arriving at Elysium Gate, Eli Carter wasn't just a human among aliens. He was something else. Something she, saw that he didn't yet understand, and that terrified him more than it thrilled him. That phrase gnawed at him, haunting his thoughts whenever he tried to focus on reports, meetings, or the endless bureaucracy of Earth's delegation. The girl's amber eyes would float into his memory, her sly smile tugging at him, and that maddening Grrr would echo until he groaned into his pillow. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was personal. By the time he finally cornered her near the docking bays, his patience had worn thin. The bay was alive with the usual bustle of ships arriving and departing, cargo droids trundling along magnetic tracks, stevedores barking orders in 3 different tongues, and the scent of scorched plasma fuel hanging in the recycled air. She was standing at the edge of a loading platform, tail flicking lazily as though she had all the time in the galaxy. Eli strode up, jaw tight. "Listen," he began, trying to keep his voice even. "If you're calling me something insulting before," he could finish. Her laughter rippled through the air. It wasn't mocking exactly, but there was a definite sharpness to it, like claws hidden in velvet. She tilted her head, ears twitching as though she found his frustration delicious. "Insult?" she purred. "No. Compliment." Eli blinked, taken off guard. "Compliment." Her tail swished behind her as she stepped closer. The air between them seemed to thrum faintly, or perhaps it was just the resonance of her voice. "Yes, compliment." She let the word linger, wrapping around him like smoke. Eli frowned. "You've been driving me half mad for days. If it's a compliment, then what does it mean?" For a long moment she simply looked at him, eyes gleaming with a strange intensity.
Ow.
Then she leaned in, close enough that he felt the warmth of her breath against his ear. In our tongue she whispered, "Grrr means fierce, dangerous protector." Her hand brushed his chest lightly, the touch so fleeting it almost might have been accidental. "You're not soft prey. You are Grrr." Eli froze, heart pounding. His translator implant flickered, straining to keep up. This time it managed to push a rough approximation into his vision. Designation: predator, guardian, both, at once. Eli opened his mouth, then shut it again. For once, words failed him. He'd expected an insult, maybe even a flirtation, but this was something entirely different. To be called prey was one of the greatest shames in Vayari culture, he recalled vaguely from his studies. But to be acknowledged as Grrr, that was no small thing. He swallowed hard. "So you've been calling me dangerous?" Her lips curved into a smile, sharp and soft at the same time. "Yes, you are danger. You are shield. You are," she purred the word again, savoring it. Grrr, the sound rolled through him, unsettling and oddly grounding at the same time. It wasn't the growl he'd first thought it to be. Now he could hear the layers beneath it. Pride, respect, and something warmer he couldn't quite name. Eli stepped back slightly, trying to process. "Why me?" Her gaze lingered on him, unflinching. "Because you are not like the others. Most prey hide when shadow falls you." She tilted her head, eyes narrowing in appraisal. "You stand." The words hit him harder than he expected. She had seen him, really seen him. In a way that made the sterile corridors of the station feel suddenly too small. Eli wanted to argue. To tell her she was mistaken, that he was just a low-level diplomat, not some warrior or protector, but something. And her unwavering gaze silenced him. Maybe, he thought, she wasn't wrong. Maybe she saw something he hadn't realized about himself. The sounds of the docking bay carried on around them, hissing vents, clanking machinery, voices shouting over. Comes but to Eli it all faded into background noise. There was only her voice, her amber eyes, and the words she had gifted him. Grrr. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a name, a title, a recognition. And the most bewildering part of all was how right it felt. For the first time, Eli didn't blink in confusion when she purred it, simply stood there, caught between pride and disbelief, realizing that the galaxy's strangest compliment had just been laid at his feet, and somehow it mattered more than any treaty he'd ever signed. The alarms began as a low hum, so subtle at first that most of the promenade ignored it. On Elysium Gate, alarms were common tests, malfunctions, the occasional cargo accident, but within seconds, the hum rose into a shrieking wail that rattled the very glass panels of the corridors. Warning lights bathed the promenade in bloody hues, and the station's automated systems boomed in dozens of languages. Security breach. Unauthorized docking. All civilians seek shelter immediately. Panic ignited like fire across dry grass. Merchants abandoned stalls. Diplomats scattered with their entourages. And families of travelers hurried for the nearest secure sectors. Eli Carter was caught in the tide, swept toward the shelter corridors until he saw them. The raiders Korth unmistakably. They were massive. Towering creatures wrapped in jagged armor plates, their eyes glowing with predatory hunger. Plasma blades hissed to life in their hands, casting sickly green light as they shoved civilians aside. The Korth were infamous for their brutality, opportunistic raiders who cared nothing for treaties, striking whenever defenses faltered, and now 3 of them blocked the promenade exit. Cutting off terrified civilians, Eli's instincts screamed at him to retreat, to wait for station security. But he could already see the flaw in that plan. The Korth weren't interested in waiting. One of them seized a panicked merchant by the throat, lifting him with ease. Another raised its plasma blade, preparing to carve a path through the crowd. Eli stepped forward. It wasn't bravery, not exactly. It was something deeper and old, stubborn defiance that humans carried in their bones. He couldn't stand by while predators toyed with prey. "Hey," he barked, voice cutting through the chaos. The Korth turned, surprised. To them, he must have looked laughably small, barely armored. Unarmed, just another weak diplomat in a simple Earth-issued jacket. But Eli met their gaze without flinching. And then, like a whisper carried on the storm, he heard her voice. The Vayari girl. She stepped from the shadows of the promenade, her amber eyes blazing. Her tail lashed once, and she purred the word he had come to dread and crave in equal measure. Grrr. The sound rolled through the corridor, low and deliberate. The Korth froze. For a heartbeat, their predatory certainty faltered. Perhaps in their culture, the word carried its own weight, translated instinctively as predator, danger, rival. Perhaps it was simply the confidence in her tone, the certainty that this human was not prey. Eli didn't question it. He moved. First, Korth lunged, plasma blade slicing downward. Eli sidestepped, grabbing a loose cargo strut from a nearby stall. He swung hard, the improvised weapon cracking against the raider's wrist. The blade clattered to the floor, and Eli rammed his shoulder into the alien's chest. Momentum toppled the brute backward into a cluster of stalls, sending crates spilling across the promenade. The second came at him with a roar. Too close for the plasma blade, it tried to grapple him. Eli ducked, sliding under its reach, then surged upward with a brutal elbow into the raider's jaw. Pain flared through his arm, but the Korth staggered, stunned by the ferocity of the counterattack. Eli followed up with a knee to its gut, forcing it to crumple. The third hesitated. Its glowing eyes flicked between Eli, breathing hard but unbroken. And the Vayari girl, still purring that infernal word with unwavering conviction, Grrr. And just like that, the third raider bolted. It shoved past civilians, abandoning its comrades, and disappearing into the chaos of the station. Silence fell in the promenade, broken only by the groans of the 2 downed Korth. Civilians peered out from behind overturned stalls, eyes wide in disbelief. A human diplomat, unarmed, outmatched, had stood against raiders and won. Eli staggered, bloodied but upright, adrenaline surging, but he was alive. More importantly, so were the people behind him. The Vayari girl approached, her movements liquid and graceful, even amidst the wreckage. She stopped in front of him, tail curling gently around her side. Her purr was softer now, almost tender, but no less deliberate. "You see?" she whispered. Grrr. Eli managed a weak laugh, wiping blood from his lip. "Yeah," he muttered, voice hoarse. "I see." The word no longer sounded strange. It no longer confused him. It felt earned. For the first time he understood exactly what she meant. and for the first time, he didn't feel like just a human among aliens. He felt like what she had named him: Grrr, predator, protector, dangerous, guardian. Whatever else the galaxy thought of humanity, he realized, the Veari girl had seen the truth first. Renara stood across from Alex, her emerald eyes bright, her tail coiled tight around one ankle as if she were nervous. Her claws flexed once, then stilled. She tilted her head, fur shimmering faintly under the artificial lights, and spoke again, low and deliberate. A grrr, she purred, the syllables flowing like velvet. Drawn out and resonant. The translation device strapped between them beeped, flickered, then hesitated as if uncertain. Finally, it displayed one word in blocky galactic common: growl. The audience erupted into whispers. Liari laughed softly, chittering at the inadequacy of the translation. Others shook their heads, recognizing that what had just been spoken was not something that could be compressed into a single sterile word. Alex blinked at the readout, then looked back at Renara. Growl, he repeated, clearly confused. That's not right, is it? Her ears twitched, and she took a step closer, closing the space between them. Not wrong, she said carefully, but not true. Her voice tinged with that. Rolling purr seemed to vibrate through the air. The human frowned, struggling. So it doesn't mean just a sound? Renara shook her head, her braids swaying. She placed a clawed hand lightly over her chest. To Liari, A-G-R-R-R is. More, it is sound, yes, but it is also warning. Comfort. Play. 1,000 things, depending on intent. The translation unit stuttered, failing to capture her nuance. It spat out broken fragments. Growl, hum, threat, song, affection. Alex tilted his head, fascinated. Affection? That earned him another purr. This one softer, almost like laughter. Renara took a breath, her eyes searching his face, as if gauging how much truth to reveal. Yes, for us to give someone a GRRR is to share. Closeness. It can frighten an enemy, but between companions. She let the sound roll again, gentler, wrapping the moment in warmth. It means you are safe with me. The chamber stilled again, significance hanging in the air. Alex's expression shifted from puzzlement to dawning realization. He swallowed, suddenly aware of the eyes of both species locked on them. His voice lowered, almost tentative. When you said it to me earlier. Renara's tail flicked, betraying her own unease. I wish to test if you could hear the difference. It's not just sound, but meaning. Her ears tilted back briefly, then forward again. You did not understand then. Perhaps now you begin to, he considered, then smiled faintly. I do. The moderator, who had been scribbling furiously at the edge of the stage, finally stood. This, he announced, his voice echoing, is the proof we sought. Language is not words alone. It's intent, emotion, connection. His gaze swept over the crowd. What one calls untranslatable may only be waiting for the right listener. A ripple of approval moved through the chamber, applause echoing from human hands. Liari claws tapping rhythmically against the benches. Renara, however, was focused only on Alex. She tilted her head again. A slow smile curling over her lips as she purred once more, this time low and unmistakably directed at him. The translation device flickered uncertainly, then shut down, overwhelmed by ambiguity. Alex chuckled, shaking his head. I guess I'll have to figure that one out without a machine. Her eyes gleamed, satisfied. Good. Some things, she whispered, are not for machines. For the first time, the two species in the amphitheater saw the truth of it, not just in words, but in the unspoken harmony between the human and the Liari girl. The lesson was not about vocabulary. It was about presence. It's about how a single purring syllable could hold fear, affection, warning, or comfort, and how understanding required more than translation. It required listening. And as Alex blinked again, still half lost but smiling Renara's answering purr filled the silence. Not just a sound, but a bridge.